Welcome to Mission Oriented, a veteran crowd podcast that showcases veteran talent from both the private and public sectors. Their impact is everywhere. We are here to uncover it. Here's your host, Bob Louthen.
Welcome, everybody. This is your host, Bob Louthen. I'm pleased to have with me as my guest today, Randal Wimmer. He's a Naval Academy graduate and a serial entrepreneur of sorts. He currently runs the Government Contracting Academy. Randy, welcome to the program. You're also a podcaster, so welcome to the program. Thank you for being on the Mission Oriented podcast.
Thank you so much, Bob. Happy to be here, and now I get to see how it's really done in the podcast world because I am really bad at it. So you're going to be carrying me today.
Okay. Well, boy, I'm not exactly Joe Rogan here, but in any case, I appreciate the compliment. Look, it's nice to meet you. You know, I've been reaching out to a lot of fellow veterans in business, and we connected through LinkedIn. But I'd like to start out. I mean, how did you wind up going to the Naval Academy?
Wow. Completely by accident. My father was a Navy chief. He retired when I was 5 years old. And the poor guy, he did not know that ROTC really existed. So it was either OCS, you were either a 90-day wonder, or you were a Naval Academy graduate. And, God damn it, son, you're better than half the officers I had to work with and had to train. You should go to the Naval Academy. And of course, I grew up hearing nothing but his sea stories and about how the chief was just barely underneath God when it came to the chain of command. So I guess I was brainwashed by my father, and I applied to the Naval Academy, not really understanding that it was actually a selective.
They are. They do screen their applicants, don't
they? Yeah, they do. And to make matters worse, I was the Top Gun year. I applied after Top Gun, so everybody wanted to be, Tom Cruise. So I have no idea how I got in, but I got in, and honestly, it was a life-changing event for me. It really did. It changed the trajectory of my life.
It's a similar story. However, an officer and a gentleman came out when I was in college, and so we put on white uniforms and went to a sorority dance one time, and that was quite good timing on their part. Anyway, I understand the influence.
Well, Annapolis is a pretty fun town on the weekends too, so I think I know what you're talking about.
When you got out of the Naval Academy, what job did you take in the Navy when you went to the fleet?
Surface warfare. I like the idea. My father was an electrician's mate chief, and I like the idea of getting into engineering. But my first commanding officer, and this is what's crazy. I had a great ship, and then at the last second, literally during graduation week, my orders got changed. And then instead of being a Naval Academy graduate and getting one of the top picks of all the opportunities, I got the second to the last one. So it was a amphibious ship that was older than I was, or it was a tanker that was going in the dry dock to be jumbo sized. Yeah. So that wasn't even going underway for like the next several years. So I opted for the old amphibious ship. But my commanding officer, he had a sense of humor, and he wanted to start out all of his junior officers in deck department. And so we could learn the real Navy. And I thought he had a really sick sense of humor, but it was probably the best thing in the world because it really did teach you the Navy, the traditions and the core Navy, line handling, bridge watch standing, all of those things. So he's pretty wise. He was pretty wise on how he did it. But then I went into the engineering department after that because I had a degree in engineering, and that's what I thought I wanted to do. So that's what I did. Very first job, I was deck department on an old fat amphibious ship called USS Portland. It's already been replaced. That USS Portland is at the bottom of the ocean right now, and
it's
there's
an artificial reef now. Is that what it is?
It is a fishing reef. So.
Interesting. So how long did you stay in active duty Navy?
10 years. 10 years. I went from USS Portland to the Naval Postgraduate School. From Naval Postgraduate School, where I got a master's degree in operations research, I went to department head school. I served one department head tour, chief engineer on the USS Nicholas, which was really a cool tour because we were one of two smart ships in the Oliver Hazard Perry class of ships, and we got to think out of the box, do some crazy stuff, try things out, and that was really exciting. I couldn't have asked for any more. And then my last duty was as a member of Propulsion Examination Board. We were part of the inspection team that was one half of the two biggest lies in the United States Navy. We're happy to have you, and we're here to help.
Very good, very good. So before we start talking about the Government Contracting Academy, which is what you're doing now, you've had a varied business career. You kind of a little bit of a serial entrepreneur. Let's talk a little bit about that history and why you think you kind of had that in your blood.
Well, you know what though? I jumped into an entrepreneurship kind of out of necessity. Life. I got out. My wife and we started having children, and next thing you know, I find myself living paycheck to paycheck. And of course, life always throws you a couple curveballs, and we got thrown a curveball. So now I'm faced with the requirement, like, hey, I got to make some real money here. I'm not retired from the military. I don't have that retirement check coming in. I need to make some real money. So I decided to launch a federal government contracting company. Of course, I didn't know anything about it. I was a billable person, so I was really good at what I was doing, I thought, but I didn't know anything about the business. So that launch didn't go anywhere. I would say that it crashed and burned, but that would be giving me too much credit that it actually got off the ground just a wee bit, and it really didn't. So what I did from
Well, we
there is
don't fail, Randy. We learn.
yeah. Well, then I succeeded massively. I learned so much. And honestly, what you just said is totally correct, Bob. It was one hell of a learning experience. I initially wanted to go get an MBA program where I would learn how to do this. And I realized very quickly that there's not a single business program out there that specializes in the world's largest customer, and that's the U.S. federal government. Not a single one. So I couldn't go to school and learn it. So I had to do it by trial and error, and also by on the job training. And I learned so much more by failing and getting my nose bloody than I ever could have going to 2 years of an MBA program. And I realized what I didn't know, and then I started looking for jobs where I could learn it. And because there was no training programs out there, none at all, none. Whatever training programs were out there, they were geared towards billion-dollar companies who had millions upon millions of dollars in bid and proposal budgets to get this training. And it wasn't geared towards small businesses. So I had to learn by job hopping, by finding jobs where I could learn that skill set that I needed in order to be successful in this industry. So I did that, and I did that for a few years, and I relaunched my company again. And this time I knew enough to keep it going for a few years, but ultimately I didn't know how to scale, and I didn't know how to do other things. So I went out of business again. And finally in 2010, I relaunched it a third time, or relaunched it a second time, which means I launched it. This is my third attempt at getting this company going. And I was successful. Every single thing that touched turned to gold. I ended up winning nearly $400 million in small business set-aside contracts. So it was those lessons that I learned by failing those first two times that made that success, that gave me the knowledge that I needed to be successful that third attempt. And it's, now I look back on it and it seems so simple, but at the time, it really wasn't. I had to learn it the hard way. And the easiest way to actually learn it was to get my nose bloodied by failing a few times. And one of the biggest obstacles that I see for most entrepreneurs is they're scared to fail. And I tell people, make failure part of the learning process. Go out knowing that you're most likely going to fail just to learn. And once you figure out what you didn't do right that time, well, then you can fix it, you can pivot, and you can get it right the next time.
Randy, in the lightning round, you said, one of the things, the life lessons you learned from being in the military was grit. I mean, You look back on your military career, your time at the Naval Academy, your time in the Navy. You think that's made you a better entrepreneur in some respects?
Absolutely. I think veterans, as a whole, I think what you learn in the military, nobody likes getting up, kissing their wife and children goodbye, going out on a 6-month deployment, or God forbid you're going over to really be in harm's way, in a combat situation. Nobody likes that, but they do it. They get up, they do it because it's their duty, and I think it's that mindset, that really makes entrepreneurs successful. Nobody likes to make that cold call and fail and be rejected. That's Nobody likes that. But it's one of those things that you learn in the military that sometimes you just got to grit it and do it. And I also had a little bit, I also had and I'm going to choke up if I don't watch myself here. So, uh, my wife gave me, I keep on telling people I relaunched my company. I relaunched, and I've had people ask me, why don't you just start another company? Well, I was kind of under contract to make sure that Analytic Strategies, my first company, succeeded. My wife, she didn't know what she really did to me by doing this. She gave me a gift, and it was a book. It was a memorandum kind of book, blank inside where you put your business ideas into it. And she put the handprints of my oldest son and the feet prints of my youngest son, who he couldn't even, she had to use his feet.
Right.
And it said, we know you can do it, Dad.
Ah,
And it's like my failure has impact upon those children. And I didn't want to let my kids down. So I kept on. I tell people I was under contract by two kids in diapers to be successful with Analytic Strategies. So I kept on relaunching that same company, because you only fail when you quit. Otherwise, you're just learning and pivoting and getting better. But as soon as you quit, you're a quitter. But as long as you keep going, you're learning, you're progressing, and you're getting closer and closer and closer to success. In fact, I tell people that I work with at Government Contracting Academy, they get frustrated because success isn't finding them immediately. And I tell them, I said, making that first dollar bill is halfway to becoming a millionaire. If you can make that first dollar bill through your company, you are literally halfway there to become a millionaire. And people don't realize that. There's that much learning has to take place before you can be successful.
hey, you're listening to the Mission Oriented podcast on the Veteran Crowd Network. My guest is Randy Wimmer, the founder of the Government Contracting Academy. What you just said is so important. I mean, how many years did it sort of take for you to become an overnight success?
Oh, almost 8 years. Almost 8 years. So, yeah, that was my overnight success story, because people always see that I won this. My very first prime contract was worth $15 million. And I managed it to, well over 35% profit margin, became a multimillionaire off of my very first prime contract. And everybody thinks like, wow, it's that easy. You go out there and win one prime contract and you checking the block, you're done. It wasn't quite like that. There was a lot of learning to get me to the point where I could play that game. Now, the federal government contracting industry is one hell of a lottery. Once you know how to get to the point where you can bid on these large set-aside contracts, it truly is a lottery game. I actually had 6 other bidders competing against me on that prime contract. I had a 1 in 7 odds of becoming a multi-millionaire on that bid, a 1 in 7. That is one hell of a lottery game. But it wasn't easy. It took 3 months of my life writing that proposal. And I do mean 3 months. I'm not talking about 3 months of work days. I'm talking about, I was waking up before the kids, woke up on the weekends. I was, pulling an all-nighter every third night. I was doing crazy stuff in order to be able to write a proposal essentially by myself, that was in essence that lottery ticket.
You ultimately sold that business and maybe you're failing at retirement. might
Yeah,
might
I'm
have
failing
been
miserably.
might have been the answer, but I think you had another mission in you, and that's the Government Contracting Academy. Why did you start that?
No, so it's 8 years. I look back on those 8 years and I'm thinking about how much my life could have been accelerated if I had a training program that I could have gone through. If I would have known where the landmines were, but instead I stepped on every single one of them. And now that I'm in a situation where I don't have to worry about making, a dollar bill as urgently as I had to in the past, now I can focus on doing something that's really, really, really meaningful. And um, I also have a chip on my shoulder, and this is the chip that I have on my shoulder. My transition program from the military was not ideal. I was not a retiree. I left at 10 years of active duty, and I was never told that my demographic was disproportionately more successful becoming entrepreneurs than any other demographic. I was never told that the training and the education that I received,
Which demographic was that before you move on?
veterans,
Okay, all
veterans,
right, sure.
veterans are disproportionately more successful as entrepreneurs than any other demographics. We, it's grit. We are good at not giving up, and that is the most important thing in entrepreneurship.
I had a friend of mine tell me one time he thought Marines made great entrepreneurs because they were tough as nails and too stupid to know when to quit. So
Yeah, I guess you could say, we learned how to suffer. That's another way to put it. But so we learned how to suffer. Because a lot of it, a lot of people think that entrepreneurship isn't, is all glamorous and it's a lot of fun. It's the most exciting thing I've ever done in my professional life. But at the same time, it's a lot of late nights. It's a lot of boring stuff. It's 100% discomfort. If you're not making yourself uncomfortable in some way every single day, you're not learning new things. You're not staying ahead of the requirement. You're not growing. And so when I was transitioning from the military, I was basically told this: hey, it's not too late to rejoin. And I'm thinking like, whoa, let me get this right. I went to the Naval Academy, the Naval Postgraduate School. I've got 10 years of hands-on experience in the military doing leadership. And you're saying that I'm not good enough to make it out in the real world, explicative So that's what, that's kind of that was a little bit of my motivation, is I really, truly wanted to make it, just to show that, hey, if not us, then who? And we are perfectly aligned for the needs of the federal government contracting industry. Again, if not us veterans, then who is going to be successful, in the government
Who's
contracting industry?
coming to the Government Contracting Academy now? Who are your students, and how does that work?
Well, this is how it works. I would probably say about 75% of them are veterans. And because they have a skill set, they understand what government contracting is. Most people in the United States don't. 95% of US companies don't have a clue what government contracting is, and they don't try it. That's why there's such a massive pie. It's the biggest spender in the world, the federal government. That's why the pie is so big, and there's so few people, going up there and getting their piece of it. And the pieces can get really big. So a lot of veterans and a lot of small business owners who want to pivot into the federal government contracting industry. So those are the two main, types of people that I'm getting: small business owners, but most of these people are veterans.
Let's maybe debunk this thing a little bit. I'm an outsider. I'm not in the
Mhm.
government contracting business, but I've met a bunch of folks that are government contractors. Um, I would say the general assumption among the rank and file out there is that dealing with the government's a big pain in the ass. It's all red tape and paperwork and nonsense and bureaucracy. And, but I guess there are big rewards for navigating that. But am I wrong in that preconceived notion?
Every customer is different. And believe it or not, the federal government is better than any other government entity out there. If you were to if you were to do business with your local government, let's say your public school system, they would have their own procurement system of how they would actually award contracts. If you did it with your own town or your own city or municipality or state or county government, whatever it is, they have their own way of doing business. So what I tell folks is, why don't you learn the one way where most of the money is coming from, which is the federal government? And even though that process can be a little lengthy, can be a little bit challenging, once you learn it, you have access to, I think in 2020, there was $228 billion awarded to small businesses. 228 billion. That is a massive number. And the reward for learning and it's not even hard, it's just different. But your reward for learning this different way of doing business is the elimination of 95% of your natural competitors. Less than 5% of U.S. companies pursue federal government contracting work.
Let me go down one other little path here. I'm in the M&A business, and you talked about federal government contractors, $228 billion of small business set-asides. But as you get up in size, number of people and revenue, you bump up against the government's definition of small business, and it may vary from one NAICS code to another, right? A lot of entrepreneurs want to build their business to sell it. Okay, so if you've got a small business set aside, or let's say a veteran-owned small business designation set aside, another one, it limits the number of buyers, if you will, for the business. Now, you're looking at me like that. I want to know the truth because you did small business, but you sold your business.
I've been involved with, on both the buy and the sales side of this industry. And is it true what you just said? Yeah, to a degree. Now, this is what the federal government does, though. Think of the federal government as defaulting to the path of least resistance. If I am a small business and I am crushing it on this contract, and another company buys me, theoretically speaking, they could say during the next recompete that we're going to keep this as a small business set aside, and you can no longer bid on it. They could say that. And if they do say that, then what you do is you go out and find another small business, and you can say, I got the secret sauce. I'll write the proposal. You be in front of us. You get 51% of the work. That doesn't necessarily mean you're getting 51% of the profit, but you're getting 51% of the revenue, and we'll be your big brother partner, and we'll be doing your 49%. So that's worst case scenario. However, what frequently happens is the government path of least resistance. They know that you're performing. They don't want to mess with anything that's working that well. So they'll say, we'll flip this to full and open because we know that you were just acquired and you're no longer technically a small business. So, you'll be able to bid on it, and we'll just make something else a small business set aside.
I have so much to learn about
they do
government
crazy stuff like that all the time.
And so, Randy,
this is okay, Bob. Can I talk a little bit more about that? Because
sure.
Let's just say you're a mid-major, and that's what I call anybody who's about $100 million to $1 billion a year in revenue, and you're no longer a small business, and now you're forced to compete against big companies. And if you want to enter, let's say for example, the NAVSEA, Naval Sea Systems Command, that's a target market for you. Now, you can either try to go head to head with Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman to win your way into NAVSEA without having any past performances, or you can buy a small business who's crushing it in NAVSEA. And then what you could do is now you have all these contracts that you can use for past performances. So these past performances, the most valuable thing that a company has is their past performance. It's their performance reputation. It's no difference on
buy it instead of building it. Huh?
They're guaranteed to have that contract if they buy it. If they try to compete for it, they could compete for decades and never win. But if they buy their way in, they're in. It's guaranteed. It's fast, it's relatively cheap, and it's guaranteed.
We're going to put links to the Government Contracting Academy and how to get in touch with Randy on the landing page and so forth to accompanies this podcast. But Randy, how do people get in touch with you? How do you want them to reach out? Where can they learn more?
Well, the easiest way to learn more is you can always find me on LinkedIn. All you got to do is just search Randal Wimmer. That's Randal with one L, Wimmer.
Or saving toner, I know.
Yeah. Or they can go to gcacampus.com, or they can go to governmentcontractingacademy.com. So they're pretty intuitive names. But gcacampus.com is our online campus, and there's where you can actually take some sample courses, kind of figure out what it is that we really offer. Government Contracting Academy is more informational about the industry and so on.
Randy, what I love about doing podcasting is I always learn something, and so I really appreciate you being a guest on the program. One other little pitch: you have a little podcast of your own. Tell everybody about that one, and we'll put a link to your podcast as well.
Oh, I appreciate that. It's called Entrepreneur Sound Off, and what I try to do is I try to find successful, small business owners. And I interviewed them to see how they did it, what their secret sauce was. There's a lot of different paths to success, and I also try to address certain issues that typically come up either in the entrepreneur world and or the government contracting world. If you're not really big on government contracting, I'd say half the content just deals with entrepreneurship as a whole.
Interesting. Well, we're going to put a link to your podcast on the landing pages and push that out as well. Our guest today has been Randy Wimmer, Naval Academy grad, and the founder of the Government Contracting Academy. Randy, thank you for being a guest on the program. I'll throw out an Army Bravo Zulu to you for your performance today. Thanks so much for joining us, and go Army, beat Navy. If you want to give a shout out.
Hey, I was going to say, no, you had to go bad on us. I was going to say, hey, let's go splice the main brace, but.
All right. Well, it's been great to have you as a guest on the program. Thanks everybody for listening, and that's a wrap.
Thank you for listening to Mission Oriented. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and you won't miss an episode. To learn more about Mission Oriented and the Veteran Crowd Network, visit us at www.veterancrowdnetwork.com.